And Carney really is a master at that. And the Liberals, the Canadian Liberals, are a treacherous bunch. And they will say anything to get elected. And Canadians are desperate to believe that. And then the Liberals have been extremely canny in leveraging that anti-American sentiment.
Mark Carney has officially said the most insane thing I think I've ever heard him say, actually, up until this point. He declared that we are at war over these tariffs and trade with the United States. There was a whole lot of unhinged in there. But, first he was copying Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. And then today, he actually made an announcement that was directly copying Donald Trump. Oh, the irony. But here, let's just go ahead and fact check that with not only data, but also with what Donald Trump himself has said over the last 24 hours. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, give us a follow on other platforms as well. Like the video and comment your thoughts down below. Thank goodness we have Pierre Poilievre to be the rational leader that this country actually needs, and to also contrast the lunacy of the Liberal government in Canada. This is all so obvious. But at the very least, Mark Carney did in fact finally describe what he means when he says that he is going to build more pipelines. You're gonna love this.
About 10 days ago, I announced that a new Liberal government will cover the costs of apprenticeships, including training for Canada's skilled workers in the trades. I announced that we will invest in the entire pipeline of talent, from the workers themselves through to the labor unions such as Unifor here, through to post-secondary institutions, employers, and the provinces. I announced that we will work with the provinces to ensure that our newly trained workers are mobile, agile, that they can go anywhere across this country where they're needed and immediately work.
You hear that, guys? When he says he's going to build pipelines, he means pipelines of talent. Yeah, that's going to totally help us with this whole trade situation. But it should come as a shock to absolutely nobody, given Mark Carney's own words.
And if the world truly wants a revolution towards a more sustainable, resilient, and fair energy system, the finance for it will be there.
It's pretty fascinating to witness a man who has built his entire life upon GFANs, net zero, carbon taxes, climate change. That is how he has made his money over the years. And suddenly he comes into politics and people are foolish enough to A, not do their research, and B, think that he's not just going to continue promoting the same things he's written 2 books on now. One of the books, by the way, they delayed the release date of it until after the election. I wonder why, because his first one was quite damning. Actually, I came across this post from Alex Zoltan on X. This is a couple days or weeks old already, but he says, pro tip, if you're going to run for politics at some point in your career, don't write books about your disdain for freedom.
As you pointed out in your introduction, the Trudeau Liberals were headed for utter catastrophe, which was a fate they richly deserved. And now Canadians have united, and at least to some degree, and actually have started to understand, and maybe this is a salutary consequence of Trump's saber rattling, that maybe they have a country worth protecting, and that maybe our absolute dependence on the United States, which we've really fallen into, let's say in the last 30 years in particular, was a strategic error because it left us with no cards on the table. But at the same time, what's happened is that Canadians have decided that because of how Mark Carney presents himself and because of his CV, his record, such as it is, that he's really the guy to deal with Trump. Now, Trump has already said publicly that he'd rather deal with a weak liberal than a strong conservative, speaking from his pro-American stance. But Canadians really haven't taken that to heart. You can't overestimate the utility of looking the part. And Carney really is a master at that. And the Liberals, the Canadian Liberals, are a treacherous bunch. And they will say anything to get elected. Carney has convinced Canadians that he's going to put together an effective industrial policy. And this is something that I just can't understand. I read his book, Values, twice. I really tried to understand it. And there isn't anything that Carney believes more deeply than that carbon dioxide is going to destroy the world. He staked his entire soul on that proposition. And now he's telling Canadians that he's going to be the leader to turn us back into an industrial dynamo, which is kind of a 1970s vision anyways. And Canadians are desperate to believe that. And then the Liberals have been extremely canny in leveraging that anti-American sentiment.
Oh, have they ever? Strategically, nefariously, have they tied Conservatives to Donald Trump, which is just, it makes zero sense, to be frank. But the thing about this, we're going to be jumping back to ButtonGate, because even CBC now is calling out the Liberals for this, because it is so wild what took place and the levels and chains of commands. And then the response that Mark Carney gave, which we discussed yesterday.
Yeah, look, the statement we got from the party yesterday was crap in terms of, there are stronger words I would like to use. It spoke around the issue without speaking to the issue. It was all this nonsense, passive voice, and it reminded me of the comms troubles they had when they were at 16% in the polls. So, Lisa, I don't know if they've learned from that near-death experience in terms of addressing an issue clearly. The Liberal leader was better at it today, but you know, I take Jonathan's point. There's thousands of volunteers across the country, and there's always some meathead who's going to rip down a sign or something like that in a riding. But this is right out of the war room, this sort of thing, and it kind of undermines what Mark Carney's central pitch is to Canadians in this campaign.
It just is unreal that this is actually happening, and it's so wrong on so many levels, you know, and it's what I always say. In order for Mark Carney and the Liberals to look bad, the only thing Conservatives have to do is tell the truth. In order for the Liberals to make the Conservatives and Poilievre look bad, they have to lie. They have to mislead. They have to make something really dramatic and that's a non-issue. That's what they have to do in order to win. And that's really telling.
The Carney campaign, their main offer is calm and stability and a lack of drama, and this violated that. And then lastly, I want to agree, I think it's, you know, reassigning these staffers to somewhere else in the campaign is really not acceptable. They displayed excessively poor judgment, not just in doing this, but of course in speaking about it in front of a journalist.
Some of those, like Make Canada Great Again, that's a hat, that's a t-shirt. That's what you do see that at Conservative rallies. I don't know if the Liberals planted that or not.
To be clear and factual here, you actually don't see that at Conservative rallies, and I've been to dozens of them, provincially and federally, over the last number of years. You don't see that at all. In fact, there were videos, and it was widely viral, that there were Conservatives who showed up with Make Canada Great Again hats at a rally who were escorted away. They weren't allowed to attend. So that is simply not true. And this whole situation with the buttons that were very MAGA and Trump-esque, that were left so that they could frame the Conservatives as being Trump lovers, I guess, I don't know, is really telling, because, you know, to the same effect, we've been hearing how many things right now about MAGA, Trump, all these things. Meanwhile, there was a leaked CSIS document, which we discussed in yesterday's video as well, where CSIS had said that the Chinese Communist Party was trying to infiltrate the Canadian election, and that they would be using things like comparing Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump. And lo and behold, we have an election now in 2025, and that is exactly what's being done. It's really something concerning, something to ponder at the very least. But then you also have all of these reports, again, coming out of CBC News primarily, where there's allegedly Conservatives who are going to the lengths of printing t-shirts and showing up to Poilievre rallies or press conferences wearing "Do you trust the polls?" on them, with signs and banners that read "Do you trust the polls?" on them. And CBC's commenting on it. Oh, that's very Trumpy. It's very Trumpy. And now, by the Liberal Party actively doing this, it makes you wonder, are those actually Conservatives? Are those actually Poilievre supporters? I haven't seen anything like that at any of the rallies I've been to, so it clearly isn't a movement that has swept over the nation by any means. Could that also be a Liberal plant?
President Trump is trying to fundamentally restructure the international trading system. In the process, he's rupturing the global economy. And that 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services and ideas, is over. There is no going back. We, in Canada, we will have to build a new relationship with the United States. And Canada can help design the global trading system with like-minded countries.
How absolutely unhinged is that to say? And also it follows Mark Carney and what he has been advocating for his whole flippin' life. He wants to redesign how things are done. He wants more control. He wants the money that comes with shaping policies, as he has bragged about in how many videos they're out there. There's some that are even just a few months old of him bragging about the policy changes he's been able to make that have impacted positively his investments, his bosses. How can nobody else see this?
What I said is that we have designed our emissions framework for the automobile sector in a smart way. It provides very large incentives for companies that have production here who sell into Canada. They will get 100% and maintain that production and investments in Canada. They will get 100% remission on our counter tariffs. So in other words, our counter tariffs won't apply if they continue to produce, continue to employ, continue to invest in Canada. If they don't, they will get 25% tariffs on what they are importing into Canada. Okay, so the incentives are there.
If there wasn't a tariff system that is a incentive for people to come, and remember, there are no tariffs. All you have to do is do your work right here. If you have your company here, if you build your product, make your car or whatever it is you're making, no tariffs.
It's a war, and we can't provide guarantees for every situation, and that just underscores how important it is, the negotiation with the U.S. president, and who is going to be across the table for a global approach, who knows how to get the deal that will build out for our auto industry and other industries in Canada. Thank you.
So let's just clarify a couple of things here. Number one, for a guy who loves to brag about, oh, I know the world, you don't though, because what you have successfully done, Mr. Carney, as far as I can tell by your track record, is you have lobbied illegally in some cases or used your influence in order to twist people's arms and shame them into buying things that help you, that help your investments. That has gone very much awry in many cases. GFANS, one of the things that he has co-founded, as an example, has been talked about at length in the United States because they say that it is a scam, it is corrupt. All of those net zero things, he used to have BlackRock and everything invested in it. And guess what? They all pulled out because there was no money to be made there. There was nothing there. He was selling them a lie. Same with ESG. All of these things that Mark Carney is trying so hard to force people to do before he just punishes them for not doing it, as he has said in several videos, which we have displayed on this channel, are not moneymakers. They are not economy growers. They are not good for your people. The only thing they are good for is you. So no, you don't have global business experience at all. Actually, you're not a businessman at all. You're an investor. You're a central banker. You want more control. And let's clear this up as well. You know, all this talk about, oh, wow, the US is so different now. We're going to have to change everything. Let's dumb that down a tad. How ridiculous is that? That you have a nation who says we're going to put 25% tariffs on some products in your country. We want to have zero tariffs, but we're just going to reciprocal tariff you on certain things. We want to have, we want investment to be made in our country first and foremost. America's always been America first. Duh. And the liberals' response to that is, oh, we're going to have to redefine, fundamentally change. No, we don't. We don't have to do any of that, actually. And you know that. These people know that. They know that our relationship with the U.S. isn't over. They know that it actually hasn't changed at all. They just know that they kind of screwed their country because Donald Trump came in and called them out on what a terrible job they've been doing for our own economy. If our economy was good, this wouldn't be this absolutely detrimental thing. If investment in this country was being made, this wouldn't be a big deal because we wouldn't be relying on the United States. And for him to say, oh, we have to partner with like-minded nations, like who? Because according to J.D. Vance, as of yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance reported that the U.S. and U.K. are currently working very hard on a trade deal, and there's a good chance that the two sides will come to an agreement.
I got into this race because I felt we needed to focus on the economy, and now, of course, what has come with that is this great economic tariff crisis that the Americans have brought on us.
What you have done to your people in order to win is disgusting, the more that I think about it, especially when you see the insane amounts of Trump derangement syndrome and conservative derangement syndrome as a result of this insanity and just nonsense, this misleading nonsense about tariffs that Mark Carney engages in again today because it's helping him in this election. It's sickening. We have the United Kingdom actively negotiating a potential trade deal. Japan, same thing. Same with India. Same with the EU. Same with South Korea and Vietnam. Same with Mexico. Do you want to know who hasn't really, though? Canada and China. Those are the only two countries that are not actively negotiating with the United States right now over this.
But we will overcome this. I have no doubt about it. I have no doubt that we will stabilize the relationship, get back to trading while protecting our sovereignty and our independence. I think, frankly, what's going to happen is that midterms are going to start to get closer, and congressmen and senators are going to say to the president, okay, our factories are under pressure because of these crazy tariffs. Our consumers are paying higher prices. Can you please stop fighting with Canada? It's making our people poorer. And I think we can get a deal that will bring peace and calm, and we can get back to focusing on the problems that were homemade. Like, before Donald Trump was reelected, we had a liberal housing crisis. We had 2 million people lined up at food banks every single month. We had people paying more in taxes than they're spending on food, clothing, and shelter combined. And those problems are going to survive after Donald Trump unless we take a dramatically different action to fix them. Mark Carney represents more of the same. It's going to be the same liberal MPs, same liberal ministers, same liberal promises, and you'll get the same liberal result. We need a change, and I'm the only change in town.
And also yesterday, Trump says he might exempt auto parts from tariffs. He said that he's considering those exemptions due to the fact that it's going to take some time for manufacturers to switch to parts that are manufactured in the U.S. And I quote, "I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places," Trump said. And they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that. Donald Trump says, "I can be flexible on tariffs." Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible, and you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go, sometimes you have to go around it or above it, he said. There'll be maybe things that are coming up. I helped Tim Cook recently and that whole business. I don't want to hurt anybody. Our problem is not Donald Trump. And everybody knows that. The politicians saying it know that. I'm quite positive everybody on the news knows that. But it's going to win the Liberals the election. Donald Trump is going to win them the election. That is exactly what CSIS warned the Chinese were up to back in 2021. And instead of doing anything about it, the Liberals said, you know what? We don't need the Chinese to do that for us, though we'll take their help maybe. We're just going to do that anyway. If we can win the election by using Donald Trump, let's do that for sure. That is exactly what that CSIS report outlined. If you didn't catch that, it's in yesterday's episode in the latter half, by the way. And there is something so glaringly obvious at this point of Mark Carney and the Liberals and Greens and NDP calling for more censorship, while also failing to protect Canadians even when they are flagged and warned. Why would they want to censor your speech when they're also not willing to hold themselves accountable for anything and they don't want you to hear about it? There was this report that went pretty gosh darn viral recently. It was penned or sent off on April 12th by Peter Merrifield, who's a sitting sergeant, and also retired detective Paul McNamara. And they released an open letter to Mark Carney. David McGuinty, Steve McKinnon, Melanie Jolie were all on that list as well. They accused the ministers of putting partisanship ahead of the law and shielding the public from the truth, especially after the fallout of two other pretty predominant cases when it came to foreign interference that were happening and national security threats that they were aware of. And you hear this information and it just makes you think, wow, they wanted so desperately to blame everything on the Conservatives. Remember when Justin Trudeau was speaking on foreign interference, when he was testifying, and he said Russia, the Conservative Party. I know of conservative ministers. Where are those conservative ministers? Because we had the Hogue report, which came out a few months ago, that said, no, there's none. But we have, in the last month or so, had not one, but 2 press conferences from SITE Task Force that have said liberals are being targeted by Chinese foreign interference in the liberal leadership race, in the federal election. Liberals are. I wonder why it is that they want to ban you from free speech, that they want to call everything conspiracy theory and misinformation to discredit anybody who talks about it, and why exactly it is that they want to blame everything on the conservatives in Russia. Because Canadians are so molded into believing whatever the hell the narrative is. Nobody thinks critically anymore. Nobody asks why. Nobody does the research, except for you because you're watching this. Most people don't. Most people don't know about this. Most people will never, ever even hear about this, but they will still tell you. Why doesn't Pierre Poilievre have his security clearance? Are you kidding me? And it's not like this is just some spicy letter by 2 people who just really don't like the Liberals. No, one of them is a sitting sergeant. The other is a retired detective. And this is a full-blown national security reckoning with names, dates, documents, and also a challenge to Mark Carney to do something about it. I know I didn't deep dive into it as much as I probably would have liked. I'm sure I can do that tomorrow, but I know Moose on the Loose did a fantastic job with this story. If I'm not mistaken, he was the first one to break it on YouTube. The Elevate podcast also did. I'll link both of their videos in the description if you want to check them out. And if you still want me to cover it in more detail with what we know as of today, I will do that tomorrow. Let me know in the comments down below. But if not, this is obviously going to hopefully be a continued ongoing topic now, especially if the likes of CBC or CTV start to pick it up, which we will see the public pressure on that one, because as of the time that I'm recording this, at the very least, I haven't heard a peep from anybody. But as I said before, again, big shout out to Kevin from Bridgewater for kind of clarifying some things for me with this case. Nonetheless, though, China is clearly a far greater threat to our country and democracy than Donald Trump is, if anything has been made clear over the last few days. Perhaps that's why Mark Carney has remained absolutely silent over the 100% tariffs China has put on our farmers. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a follow, subscribe, like the video, and of course, comment your thoughts down below. Tomorrow, I have a nice little chat I did with Lisa Raitt.
And if we're going to be telling Canadians that you're going to lose your childcare subsidies if we invest in the military, I actually think that's actually irresponsible and reckless. I don't agree with that framing whatsoever, and I really dislike it when I hear anyone talking about it in that way.
Okay, no, I wasn't trying to pit one against the other.
That video is going to be uploaded in the early morning, and then later on in the day, we'll be diving a little bit deeper into woke ideology in Canada, defunding the CBC, and some more stuff about interference and misinformation.